My name is Abigail Wright, and I was 28 years old when I shattered my family's carefully constructed illusion. Growing up, I thought I had won some kind of cosmic lottery. My parents were the kind of people others admired at church picnics and neighborhood barbecues. My mother baked pies from scratch. My father coached Little League and never missed a single game. We had Sunday dinners where everyone actually showed up, laughed at the same stories we'd heard 100 times, and lingered at the table long after the dishes were cleared. Our family reunions were legendary. Every summer, we'd gather at my grandparents' lake house, aunts, uncles, cousins, stretching back 3 generations. There were matching t-shirts, photo slideshows, and a family tree poster that my grandmother updated by hand each year. I remember tracing my finger along those branches as a child, finding my name written in her careful script, connected to everyone else by ink and intention. They talked about bloodline the way some families talk about religion. My grandfather would toast to keeping the legacy strong. My aunts compared cheekbones and laugh lines, debating who inherited whose eyes. There was pride in resemblance, in the way certain traits skipped generations and reappeared, like proof of something sacred. I always felt slightly out of step, but I told myself that was normal. My brother had dad's build, my sister had mom's smile. I had something, maybe Great Aunt Catherine's nose, though no one could quite agree. It didn't bother me, not really. Families are complicated. Not everyone fits the mold perfectly. But there were moments, small, easy to dismiss, when I'd catch my mother watching me with an expression I couldn't name, or my father would pause mid-sentence when someone mentioned how much I looked like him, then change the subject. I learned not to ask questions that made people uncomfortable. I thought that was love, keeping the peace, not disturbing the warmth we'd built together. I didn't know yet that warmth and truth aren't always the same thing. The first time I noticed something off, I was 12. We were at a family reunion, and my aunt pulled out an old photo album. She flipped to a page of newborn pictures, my brother swaddled in blue, my sister in pink, both with those unmistakable family features, even as infants. Then she turned the page to what should have been me. The baby in the photo looked different, not dramatically, but enough. My aunt hesitated, glanced at my mother across the room, then closed the album. "You were such a beautiful baby," she said, but her voice carried something I couldn't identify. I asked to see the picture again. She said she'd lost her place. When I was 16, I went to the doctor for a sports physical. The nurse asked about family medical history, heart disease, diabetes, cancer. My mother, sitting beside me, went very still. She stumbled through answers, vague and uncertain in a way that felt wrong for someone who kept meticulous records of everything else. The nurse noticed too, gave her a strange look but didn't press. I told myself she was just stressed. Memory gets fuzzy. It happens. At 23, during a casual dinner, my uncle made a joke about how I was the surprise addition to the family. Everyone laughed, but it was the kind of laughter that cuts off too quickly. My father changed the subject immediately, almost aggressively. I asked what he meant later. My uncle said he couldn't remember. Probably nothing. There were more. A cousin once said I didn't look anything like baby photos she'd seen of my dad's side. An elderly relative mistook my sister for me in a childhood story, then corrected herself in a way that felt rehearsed. My mother's best friend slipped once, started to say something about when you came to us, then stopped mid-sentence and pretended her phone had rung. I rationalized every single one. Families are messy. People misspeak. Memory is unreliable. I didn't want to be the person who invented problems where none existed, who disrupted the peace with paranoia. But the truth is, I felt it. That low hum of wrongness beneath everything warm and familiar. I just didn't want to listen, because listening meant questioning the only belonging I'd ever known. And I wasn't ready to lose that yet. My mother asked me to help her organize the attic on a Saturday in March. Estate planning, she said, getting things in order. She wanted to sort through old tax documents, insurance papers, things that had been stuffed into boxes for decades. I didn't think twice about it. The attic smelled like dust and cardboard. We worked in comfortable silence, her downstairs making labels, me upstairs pulling files from ancient accordion folders. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect: mortgage papers, car titles, my father's military discharge documents. Then I opened a manila envelope marked Legal, 1997, in my mother's handwriting. Inside were adoption papers, finalized October 14th, 1997. My name, Abigail Marie, typed neatly on every page. Birth mother's rights terminated. Adoptive parents listed as the two people I'd called mom and dad my entire life. I didn't gasp. I didn't drop the papers. I just sat there on the attic floor, holding them under the weak light from the single bulb overhead, reading the same lines over and over, like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My hands went cold first, then my ears started ringing, a high-pitched hum that made the silence feel louder. I could hear my mother moving around downstairs, humming something under her breath, completely unaware that 20 feet above her, I was holding proof that my entire identity had been a story someone else wrote. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't confront her. I folded the papers carefully, put them back in the envelope, and kept sorting files like nothing had happened. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out my birth certificate. It listed my parents' names, the ones I'd always known, but now I understood it was amended. I searched adoption records, cross-referenced dates, found the hospital listed on the paperwork. I was born in a city 2 hours away, not in the town where my family had always said I came into the world. Every story I'd been told had a crack in it now. Every memory reframed itself. The baby photo that didn't quite match, the medical history my mother couldn't provide, the offhand comments from relatives who knew the truth and had spent 28 years keeping it from me. I sat in my living room until 3 a.m., surrounded by documents and search results, understanding with absolute clarity that I had been the only person in my family who didn't know who I was. They had all known, every single one of them, and no one thought I deserved to. I didn't tell anyone, not for weeks. Then weeks became months. I went to Sunday dinners and smiled at the same jokes. I attended my cousin's baby shower and listened to my aunt talk about family genetics, how the new baby had my uncle's ears, my grandmother's chin. I nodded along like I always had, except now every word landed differently. My mother called to plan the summer reunion. She was excited, animated in that way she gets when she's organizing something. 50 years, she kept saying. Can you believe it? 50 years of keeping this family together. I held the phone away from my ear and stared at the envelope of adoption papers I'd hidden in my desk drawer. Keeping the family together, just not honest. I started noticing things I'd been blind to before. The way my father's sister would pause before including me in stories about the grandkids who look just like their grandfather. How my mother's friends would compliment my siblings' resemblance to her, then change the subject when they got to me. The family tree poster at my grandparents' house, my name added in the same ink as everyone else's, but somehow I could see the difference now. It looked like an insertion, an edit, a correction to a narrative that had been written before I existed. I'd catch myself mid-sentence sometimes, about to reference a family trait I supposedly inherited, then stop, because I hadn't inherited anything, not genetically, not the cheekbones or the laugh or the tendency towards stubbornness everyone said ran in our blood. The anger came in waves, not loud, not explosive, just this low, constant simmer underneath everything. They had decided for me, decided I didn't need to know, decided that their comfort mattered more than my truth. And they'd made that decision every single day for 28 years. But then I'd remember my father teaching me to ride a bike, the patient way he ran beside me until I found my balance. Or my mother staying up all night when I had the flu, her hand cool on my forehead. These people loved me. I knew that. I felt that. So why hadn't love included honesty? I started seeing how much of our family identity was built on blood. The stories we told ourselves about strength passed down through generations, about traits that skipped branches but always came back. We weren't just a family, we were a lineage, a genetic thread that supposedly connected us to something bigger than ourselves. And I was outside of it, had always been outside of it. I just hadn't known I was standing on the periphery of a circle I could never actually enter. The worst part wasn't the lie, it was continuing to exist inside it, watching everyone perform this charade of belonging, knowing I was the only one who didn't understand the performance was for me. I felt like a stranger at my own family gatherings, an actor who'd forgotten she was playing a role, surrounded by a cast who never broke character. The invitation arrived in May, heavy cardstock, gold lettering, celebrating 50 years of family printed across the top, with a photo of my grandparents on their wedding day. There was a schedule inside, 3 days of events, a rented hall, family flying in from Oregon and Florida and Texas. My mother had been planning it for over a year. I held the invitation and felt something shift inside me. I had a choice. I could show up, smile for photos, listen to speeches about bloodline and legacy and the unbreakable bonds of family. I could stand there while my grandfather toasted to generations of shared DNA, while relatives pointed out resemblances I didn't actually carry, while everyone performed this elaborate theater of belonging that I now understood was built on a lie I was supposed to protect. Or I could stop. It wasn't anger that made the decision clear. It was exhaustion. I was so tired of being the only person in the room who didn't know the truth of my own story. Tired of managing everyone else's comfort while swallowing my own erasure. Tired of pretending that silence was the same thing as peace. I thought about all the moments I'd stayed quiet to keep things smooth, all the times I'd dismissed my own instincts because questioning felt like betrayal. I'd spent 28 years being a supporting character in someone else's narrative, and I'd done it so well that even I had believed the script. But I couldn't do it anymore. This wasn't about punishing anyone. It wasn't about standing up and delivering some dramatic revelation for the shock value. It was simpler than that, and somehow harder. It was about refusing to participate in my own disappearance, about saying quietly but firmly that I existed outside the story they'd written for me. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted to stop hurting myself. The reunion was in 6 weeks. I marked it on my calendar and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not peace, not yet, but the possibility of it. The clarity that comes when you finally stop carrying weight that was never yours to hold. I would go to the reunion. I would tell the truth. Not because I wanted to destroy anything, but because I couldn't keep pretending I didn't exist. The hall was exactly what my mother had envisioned. White tablecloths, centerpieces made from photos and mismatched frames, string lights draped across the ceiling like stars. A banner stretched across the back wall, 50 years strong, the Harrison family legacy. I arrived early to help set up, the way I always did. My mother was already there, directing cousins on table arrangements, her face flushed with joy. My uncle clapped me on the shoulder and said I had my grandmother's eyes. I didn't. I knew that now, but I smiled and thanked him anyway, the performance so automatic I barely registered doing it. The slideshow played on a loop against the far wall, black and white photos fading into color ones, babies becoming children, becoming parents, becoming grandparents. My childhood photos were woven throughout, seamlessly placed between images of my siblings and cousins. There I was at age 5, gap-toothed and grinning, age 12 at the lake, 16 in a prom dress. The narrative was flawless. No gaps, no questions, no indication that my origin story was anything other than what everyone believed. I watched my parents move through the crowd like celebrities at their own premiere. My mother laughed at something my aunt said, her hand resting on my father's arm. They looked so happy, so proud. This was their triumph, 50 years of family, unbroken and strong, a legacy they'd helped build and protect. I stood near the dessert table with a glass of lemonade I wasn't drinking, surrounded by voices and laughter and the warm hum of people who believed they knew exactly where they belonged. No one could see what I was carrying. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and undeniable. Around me, everything looked perfect. The decorations, the smiles, the stories being passed around like heirlooms. But I knew what they didn't. That perfection had always required my silence, and I was done being silent. The speeches started after dinner. My grandfather went first, talking about building something that lasts, about roots that go deep. Then my father stood, microphone in hand, and the room settled into that expectant quiet people give to someone they respect. He talked about legacy, about bloodline strength, about how our family had always understood that what we pass down matters, not just material things, but traits, values, the very essence of who we are encoded in our DNA and carried forward through generations. He was good at this, commanding and warm at the same time. People nodded along, smiling. I stood up. I didn't plan the exact moment. My body just moved, like it had been waiting for permission I'd finally given it. The room's attention shifted to me. My father paused mid-sentence, surprised but not alarmed. He probably thought I wanted to add something sweet, some anecdote that would complement his speech. "I need to say something," I said. My voice was calm, steady. I wasn't shaking. The room went quiet in a different way now, listening. I recently discovered something I didn't know before. I looked at my parents. My mother's face had already started to change, color draining like water from a glass. "I'm adopted. I found the papers a few months ago." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, suffocating, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone is trying to process the same impossible thing at once. I watched it spread across the room like a wave. Confusion first, people glancing at each other, at my parents, trying to understand if they'd heard correctly. My aunt's mouth opened slightly. My cousin's hand froze halfway to her water glass. My father tried to recover. He laughed, but it came out wrong, too sharp. "Abigail, this isn't the time for—" "It's true," I said, and sat back down. My mother's expression had frozen entirely. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the table in front of her like it might open up and swallow her whole. My father's face cycled through emotions too fast to name. Denial, anger, panic, something close to pleading. The room fractured into whispers, people leaning toward each other, voices low and urgent. My grandmother's hand went to her chest. Someone's chair scraped against the floor. The slideshow kept playing behind us, my childhood face smiling from the screen, oblivious. I didn't elaborate, didn't explain how I found out, didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, while the perfect reunion my mother had planned for a year collapsed around us. The shock wasn't in what I'd said, it was in how I'd said it. No tears, no drama, no anger, just truth, delivered calmly, undeniably. And because I wasn't emotional, they couldn't dismiss it. Because I wasn't angry, they couldn't make me the villain. I'd simply spoken, and in doing so, made it impossible for anyone to keep pretending. The reunion didn't recover. People tried. Someone suggested cutting the cake. My uncle attempted a joke that landed in silence, but the energy had shifted, fractured into something that couldn't be put back together. Conversations splintered into tight clusters of whispers. I watched relatives glance at me, then quickly away, like I'd become something they didn't know how to approach. Some did approach. My cousin Emily hugged me in the hallway outside the bathrooms, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I had no idea." An older aunt touched my arm gently, said nothing, just nodded, like she understood something she couldn't name. Others avoided me entirely, gave me wide berth like I was contagious, like truth might spread if they got too close. My parents found me near the coat check an hour later. My father's jaw was tight. My mother's eyes were red but dry. They didn't ask if we could talk. They just walked me outside to the parking lot where no one could hear. "Why would you do that?" my mother said. Her voice shook. "Why there? Why in front of everyone?" I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at her. My father filled the silence. We were going to tell you. We always planned to, but you were so happy, and then you got older, and it never seemed like the right time. 28 years, I said quietly, and it was never the right time? My mother's face crumpled. We adopted you as an infant. You were ours from the beginning. It didn't feel like a lie. It felt like it didn't matter. You were our daughter. That was the truth that mattered. But I didn't get to decide that, I said. You decided for me. Every single day, you decided I didn't deserve to know. My father's expression hardened. You embarrassed us in there, in front of the entire family. You made us look like you lied, I finished, because you did. They wanted comfort, reassurance that I understood, that I forgave them, that we could smooth this over and go back inside and salvage what was left of the celebration. They'd had months to sit with this possibility, and they'd chosen not to. Now they were upset about one evening of discomfort. I'd spent months alone with the weight of their deception. They were asking me to carry their shame too. I couldn't. Inside, through the windows, I could see the reunion continuing in fractured pieces. My grandmother sitting alone, staring at nothing, relatives in heated conversation, the slideshow still playing, my face appearing and disappearing among people I was connected to by choice, not blood. The family that had prided itself on closeness, on unbreakable bonds, was fracturing in real time, and I understood with sudden clarity that it had always been fragile. It just took the truth to reveal the cracks. The texts started the next day. My cousin Emily, I love you. I'm here if you need to talk. My father's brother, what you did was selfish and cruel. You ruined a milestone event for attention. My mother called 3 times before I answered. When I finally did, she was crying. Everyone's asking questions. They want to know why we didn't tell you, what else we've hidden. You've made us look like terrible parents. I didn't make you look like anything, I said. I just stopped pretending. My father sent an email, formal, detached. He said I owed them an apology for humiliating them publicly, that family matters should stay private, that I damaged relationships that might never recover. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. More messages came throughout the week. Some relatives expressed quiet support, said they wished they'd known, that they understood why I'd spoken up. Others were angry, accused me of being vindictive, of choosing the worst possible moment, of not considering anyone's feelings but my own. The ones who were angry didn't understand that I'd considered everyone's feelings for 28 years. It was my own I'd finally started listening to. I stopped answering calls I didn't want to take, stopped explaining myself to people who'd already decided I was wrong. I created distance not out of spite, but out of necessity, the kind of boundary you build when you realize that some people's love is conditional on your silence. There was peace in it, real peace, not the fragile kind that requires constant performance. I didn't have to manage anyone's comfort anymore, didn't have to smile through conversations that erased me, didn't have to pretend that belonging built on lies was the same as belonging built on truth. I started searching for my biological family, not to replace anyone, but to complete the picture of who I was. I found records, traced names, sent careful emails to people who might be connected to the woman who gave birth to me. Some led to nowhere, some led to doors I wasn't ready to open yet, but they were my doors, my story, my choice. The family I'd grown up in was still there, fractured but present. Some relationships would heal with honesty, others wouldn't. I was learning to accept both. Because real power isn't in revenge, it's in choosing yourself, even when that choice makes other people uncomfortable. Especially then. It's been almost a year now. The family is still fractured, but in a different way than I expected. Some relationships healed, not back to what they were, but into something more honest. My cousin Emily and I talk more now than we ever did before. My aunt sends me articles about adoption, identity, belonging. Small gestures that say, I see you trying to figure this out, and I'm here. Others remained distant. My father's side of the family mostly stopped reaching out. A few sent birthday cards with no personal message, just their names signed at the bottom. Obligation without connection. My parents and I speak occasionally. Careful conversations about weather and work, nothing deeper. They still see what I did as betrayal. I see it as self-preservation. Maybe both things are true. Maybe that's something we'll never reconcile. My mother said recently that I destroyed the family. I told her gently that I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped protecting the fiction that was already crumbling. The family that required my silence to function was never as strong as we pretended it was. She didn't respond to that. I don't regret speaking up, not even on the hard days when I wonder what it would have been like to just keep quiet, to let them have their perfect reunion, to carry the weight alone a little longer. Because I know now that silence has a cost too, and I'd already paid it for 28 years. I've learned that belonging isn't about blood. It's not about matching someone's cheekbones or carrying their genetic code. It's not even about shared history, though that helps. Real belonging is about being seen, fully, honestly, and accepted anyway. It's about people who don't need you to be smaller or quieter or less true to you to make them comfortable. I'm still building that kind of belonging, with friends who've known my story from the beginning, with the few family members who chose honesty over performance, with myself, slowly, as I learn who I am outside the narrative someone else wrote. The truth didn't fix everything. It didn't make my family whole again, but it made me whole, and some days that's enough. I don't know what the next reunion will look like or if I'll even go. But I know this. I won't show up as someone I'm not. I won't smile through my own erasure. I won't protect a story that requires me to disappear. I chose truth over comfort, and I found peace in that choice.